Ayo.
Well,
This is the second.
That's the second, but the fact that everyone's decision starts with the same thing kind of makes me think that's right. Anyone else?
I don't know the decision, so you have to.
Okay. None of me. I'm always right. The decision is a 2-to-1 in favor of 2 judges versus 1 judge. 2 voting for 1 team, 1. It is a 2-to-1 decision in favor of the con. So the con went out with. Okay, so I was the one dissenting opinion. And I will start off by saying, I'm pretty sure I know kind of reasons why made decisions differently or whatever. The most frustrating part about this debate was that there was hardly any explanation in the last couple of speeches about why we should vote for either team. And so that's kind of bad because that leaves it up to the judges to make their own decision. I don't think either team is really doing a wonderful job of explaining what the impacts to their arguments are or why their arguments should matter in the rounds. It's just kind of like they say this, but we disagree. They say this, but we disagree. But no one's sitting down and saying, here's our argument, and here's why our argument is important and why our argument matters. And so I think this debate changes dramatically if someone actually sits down and discusses the impacts in the last couple of speeches and the reasons why those things are important. Ultimately, this was the pros saying cell phones are distracting, the cons saying technology can be used to teach, but neither one is saying is distracting more important than teaching. And so a lot of this portions of the debate are just kind of, they're washes. Neither team is really explaining, is distracting more important than the teaching? What sort of benefits do we gain from the teaching? And so it's kind of difficult to evaluate that. Ultimately, and the same thing is true with the uniforms for the most part. I think that a lot of that portion is kind of not really talked about. Kind of in the end, the easiest way for me to make a decision is to talk about the reasons why the pro makes about how uniforms might be good because they teach kids responsibility because kids have to wash it and maintain them and manage them. And I'm not really sure what the impact of this argument is, but it's something the other team didn't talk about. Granted, I think it's questionably new in the last speech, but like I said, when neither team is doing the work and it's just kind of like almost 2 ships passing in the night, and neither team is doing that level of analysis to explain why the impacts matter, it's just something easy. And I can say, well, they make an argument, this is one they make, they don't really address. I think both teams are doing a pretty decent job on the freedom of expression. I think that's kind of a wash as well. And so kind of in the end, I'm just like, well, there's this one argument that the the con really doesn't address. I'm not really sure what the impact of that is or why that impact matters, but it's something. So,
May I go first? Please.
no.
I disagree with this idea that the con team didn't respond to your responsibility arguments. In fact, I thought that during the final focus, she said that not all kids will be responsible because they'll lose their uniforms or throw stuff away. And then she also read from a quote that they had read earlier in the debate that said that when we have uniforms, the kids lose responsibility because they become overly sheltered and too protected. And to me, that was a direct response to your responsibility arguments. Now, I kind of agree that they have made this freedom of expression argument, and you have said, but there's other ways to express yourselves. I think you're winning that point because they never responded to it. But I think that if they win their argument that you overly shelter kids and hurt their responsibility by forcing them into a uniform, that is an offensive reason uniforms are bad. Your argument that there are other ways to express yourself is a defensive argument. And so ultimately, I thought that their offense for responsibility was bigger than your defense about other ways to express yourself. I think that the debate over technology is a non-debate by the end. Because you just said that, you know, distraction, and actually I think that your point about how cell phones are a form of expression is the exact opposite of what you need to be saying in this debate. Don't you want to get rid of cell phones? So if cell phones are a way to express yourself, you would be getting rid of expression. That seems like a bad thing. So I don't think that's the argument that you want to make in your final focus. I think instead you want to talk about the importance of having a classroom that's not filled with distraction. And I don't think that your impact to that should be you will be unhappy in math. Okay? I think instead you need to talk about the educational benefit of having a quality learning environment where, you know, one student's cell phone doesn't interfere with another group's pursuit of education. I also think that you could have won this debate much easier by focusing more on what Gloria talked about in the summary speech and developing the reasons that technology is good and how it improves education. The strength of her speech in the summary speech was actually all about learning. And she had a bunch of different ways that it could be incorporated into the learning environment. And I think that if you would have focused on that a little bit more, this debate would have been easy for the judges to decide in your favor. But by focusing more on expression, that you actually gave them a better chance because they had a response to expression. But in the last speech, they were not as strong on technology.
I did vote for the con, but actually for a different reason than Julian. I think that the one thing that we can take away that all three of us say is that number one, the impacts. The impact debate was very gray, hard to see, and that's why you have three different decisions. It's because like what Mike said, all three of us have to figure out for ourselves our opinion. So the lesson to take away is nail down your impacts and repeat your impacts. I thought that the uniform debate was pointless. I thought that was where there was no clash. And it was mostly because, first of all, I don't really like it, because I almost had, at the halfway point of the debate, I had it going for the pro. Because I don't really think that the con's argument about the First Amendment is really a good one. And there's no impact to it. And like we live in a country where there's a lot of uniforms and there's no First Amendment, nobody's killing each other, right? It's not a big deal. And there's no impact to it. So I didn't really see that, and it was never developed. So, and I didn't buy the end impact about responsibility. What I did buy, I agree with Julian that Gloria's speech was really good. And her speech, she talked about two things that were never answered. This idea about digital citizenship and putting a strain on the system. Now, the pro, you answered that in a way. You said, well, we can teach kids about responsibility without the phones, but you can't teach digital citizenship without a phone. And you can't you can't take the strain off the system unless the kids have phones. So you sort of have these stock answers, which are fine, they probably work 90% of the time, but they don't address her evidence. Because her evidence wasn't actually talking about learning how to be responsible, it was talking about learning how to be a digital citizen. You have to have a device to be a digital citizen. So now it's true that Yumi didn't go up and say digital citizenship, but she did extend it. She said extend learning is better. And so at that point I gave her the impact for that. And that was why. So in the future I would say Yumi try to extend more specifically what Gloria said, and then I think that the impact would be very clear.
Okay, real quick, we have some speaker awards that we should give out. Some of the people are missing, so we'll just give the ones for the people who are here. The 5th place speaker award is for Gloria Lee.
Hello, is your mom here? Ask her to come in.